All right. So I have that it is, no, we still have it's another minute, so I'll wait till 5:30. All right. So okay, now we've got it at 5:30. So let's, I call this meeting of the Executive Committee of TJ Cog to order. Lee, I know that you wanted to present to us the budget. Are there any other items for discussion besides that?
That is all, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, then. Well, then I will turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I am happy to be joining you from the COG offices, testing out our hybrid capabilities. So hopefully we'll be able to see you here in person soon, and also host those of you that prefer to be virtual in that way. Seems to be working fairly well. Before we get started, we will do a roll call just to see who's in attendance, and appreciate Jenny stepping in today for both Chantel and Elena, who are on their way to vacations and getting married. So Jenny, roll call.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, everybody. Archer Lodge. I think Mark's on here, but I can't hear you. Aberdeen.
Mark, can Mark hear us?
I'm not sure if he can hear us. I know he was trying to speak. He is not muted though.
I will reach out to Mark. I'm going to reach out to you.
Thank you. Aberdeen.
Will Mullaney.
Chatham County. Durham.
Heidi Carter for Durham County.
City of Durham. Garner. Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson for the town of Hillsborough is present.
Johnston County.
Butch Lauder with Johnston County is present.
Lee County.
Kirk Smith, Lee County, present.
Moore County. Orange County. Pittsboro.
Pamela Baldwin, town of Pittsburgh, present.
Princeton.
Don Raines, Princeton.
Sanford.
Rebecca Salmon, City of Sanford, present.
Wake County. All right, and is there anybody that came in during roll call that I missed?
Yeah, this is Ken Marshburn in Garner. I wasn't able to unmute at the time, so I'm here.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
John Bonnet's also from Pittsburgh.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lee.
Okay, well, again, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this specific item tonight on the budget. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'll present to you the recommended budget presentation. Let me make sure everything's going. You should be able to see my screen and the presentation. So again, thank you to the Executive Committee for taking time out of your evening to attend this special meeting. This is the fiscal year 2022-2023 recommended budget. And I look forward to talking to you about the budget this evening. So our budget process for this year is going to be a little bit different because the April full board meeting was canceled due to anticipating a lack of a quorum. As required by our charter, we did email the recommended budget to the board and the alternates and the regional managers on April 14th. Just as a reminder, we are required to get a budget out no later than April 15th, which is quite frankly, quite a challenge to get a budget out in that amount of time, but we've been able to do it. We usually present the budget to the full board at your April meeting and then have the public hearing at that time as well. But since the meeting was canceled, we're going to present the budget to the executive committee. And then we're going to have the public hearing and ask the board to adopt the budget at the May meeting. And as customary, we'll get feedback from the executive committee tonight and meet with our officers on the 10th and the 12th. And that's not 2 meetings with the officers. We just couldn't find a time for all the officers to be together at the same time. So I'll be meeting with a couple one day and a couple the other to talk about the budget. So our recommended budget is 34 million, which is a very significant increase from last year's adopted budget, an almost 85% increase. And really, there's a couple of very specific things that have caused for the significant increase in the budget. Mainly, it's the Wake County ARPA assistance that we are providing and working with Wake County on. That's $10 million of the increase. The others are more projects that we're working on, more opportunities under ARP to assist our members. So it is, again, a rather sizable increase, but I would imagine that that number would trend back down next year as some of the ARPA money goes out the door and we get to a more sort of normal operating budget after this year. So our member assessments or member dues remain steady. Just as a reminder to the executive committee, we charge 39 cents per capita for communities up to 150,000 population. When you hit 150,000 population, so communities like Cary and Raleigh and Durham, then the per capita actually goes down. So after 150, it's 20 cents per capita. For those of you that are county members and for the executive committee to know, the county members only pay for the unincorporated population, but separately, the counties pay a significant amount of the share for our Area Agency on Aging program. So the counties are paying they're paying their fair share. It's just split between membership and then what they pay to allow for our AAA to operate day to day. No changes to the member assessment rate. That per capita rate has remained unchanged since fiscal year 1996, 1997. So we continue to be able to provide services without an increase in our member dues. And again, that's because we're finding more projects, finding more opportunities, and increasing our membership base. We've increased by 9 local government members since 2017. And I'm very happy to report that we believe we're going to be adding 2 additional local government members in the next couple of months. We've gotten very positive feedback from Taylortown in Moore County and Foxfire in Moore County about joining the COG. And at that point, we'll only have 3 local governments left to get to 100%. And so I think that is a very achievable thing for us to be talking about and working on over the next couple of months, or maybe the next year or 2 as well. So member assessment, or what I like to call, is really a member investment. It's investing in the organization, it's investing in the region to allow us to do our work. Member investment really is used in three ways. It's the only source of funding that we have that really is flexible. So we use our member investment to match projects that require a local match. The biggest example of that is our support of the MPOs, Campo and the Durham Chapel Hill Carborough MPO. They provide us a significant amount of money for us to work on projects with them, but they require a 20% match. And so we use those member investment dollars to match those revenues coming in order to do that work. It's really the only source of funds that we have to set aside for contingency for the year. And we've set aside $61,000, which is up about $20,000 from last year. And then member investment pays a portion of salaries, and that's both the salary, the fringe, and the indirect, for a significant number of TJCOG staff members, 13 in the recommended budget. But it's important to note that the member investment, there's nobody on staff that's 100% funded by member investment. All the staff members have some percentage of their salary that comes from a project or a specific deliverable that they're working on. And the member investment is used to allow, for instance, our senior leadership team the time that they need to supervise and lead and look for opportunities. It fills gaps when maybe a position doesn't quite get to 100% and we know it's a priority. So these member investment dollars are critical to the operation of the organization. Our organizational principles are reflected in the budget. So just a little bit about those. Serving our local government members. The recommended budget includes significant funding to assist local governments with ARPA administration, grant writing, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, a new partnership with the Mid-Carolina Regional Council around finance administration. Continue to focus on data and analytics. Continues to fund our data strategy coordinator, which was a new position last year, and the anticipated unveiling of a data site for sort of a regional data center in the upcoming year. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. It includes funding for an existing position to be used at 10% to work on this organizational principle. It was 5% last year, so we're able to add an additional 5% to that position, and to also work on some initiatives with the Government Alliance for Race and Equity and some initiatives with our regional managers. Our strategic focus areas really remain unchanged, but there are some shifts in how we've organized those to reflect what we anticipate will be adopted in the strategic plan if the board chooses to adopt that plan later on this month. Our aging and human services, community and economic development, natural resources and resiliency, housing, and remain the same. Transportation is being merged. There was a rural and a metro transportation function, and those are being merged into a single transportation effort. And then we did have sort of a technical assistance and then a strategic strategy and innovation focus area. And those are being merged into a single engagement and strategic initiatives. Some of these titles will probably change when the strategic plan is adopted, but we're just using these placeholders right now until we can get the plan finalized and we know everything is, we know what the final details are going to be in the plan. So I'll quickly just talk about each focus area and some of the things that they're going to be working on in the year ahead. Our aging and human services, which is mostly our area agency on aging, will continue to administer American Rescue Plan and other special code funding. They have been inundated with funds that have come down from the federal and state governments that have been moved to the counties under ARP, CARES Act, and they've done a really good job managing all of those funding opportunities through the AAA. Continuing to enhance long-term services and supports for vulnerable older adults, and then administering those Older American Act funding, including providing reimbursements and providing the oversight that's necessary for the state and federal government for those funds in partnership with our counties. Community and economic development focus area will continue to build local capacity and regional capacity through partnerships and investments. They're going to be really focusing on continuing to expand the work we're doing around planning and zoning administration capacity for local governments, working on some regional workforce initiatives. We're waiting to hear about a very large U.S. Economic Development Administration grant that we worked on in partnership with several community colleges and several workforce boards. Also doing things around food system planning. I hope you saw the recent news release that came out maybe 3 weeks ago about a significant U.S. Economic Development Administration and Kate B. Reynolds grant to 3 COGs, us, Upper Coastal Plain, which is in Wilson, and Carter and Henderson, to work on regional food system planning. We know that's been a priority of the board, and we're really excited about that. And also really focusing on grant writing assistance. Lots of our local governments are asking for that, asking for administration. We've launched a grant writing service, which is getting a lot of interest from our local governments. So we want to be able to continue our local government members with that service. Engagement and strategic initiatives, a ton of work around the American Rescue Plan, helping our local governments report, think about projects, making sure they're compliant, looking for opportunities for cooperation, working to strengthen partnerships between our local, state, and federal agencies, which actually we were on a call, our officers were on a call with Representative Price yesterday talking about those opportunities. And then a new sort of effort, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, really focusing our attention on, we know that the market is tight for local government talent. So focusing our attention on recruitment, retention, and response operationally to our local governments around HR and recruiting, and have some interesting things in the mix around that topic as well. Housing, we're really excited about the continuing growth in our technical assistance and requests for housing assistance. One of the newest thing is we're starting to do a lot of work with the town of Cary and their CDBG, should be CDBG program, which includes data analysis and visualization around their affordable housing plan. I'm really proud of this next one. Our COG was asked, because of our great staff, quite frankly, and the great job they do, to basically administer $1.2 million in ARP funding on behalf of the entire state. So 8 or 9 other COGs are going to be working through us to administer these funds to help reduce burden and energy usage for about 180 low-income households across the state. So that's really exciting. And continuing to pursue regional collaboration opportunities around housing. Natural resources and resiliency, a new opportunity around sustainability. Several of our local governments have expressed interest in partnering around solar opportunities for residences. And so we are going to be serving as the administrative entity for that partnership, adding some of the PFAS to the list of water quality testing parameters that are monitored through our Triangle Area Water Supply Monitoring Program, and then continuing the Clean Water Education Partnership, which goes beyond our region actually and includes 45 municipalities all the way down to New Bern and Havelock and maybe Morehead City, all the way down east. Transportation, the first year of our Transportation Demand Management Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion pilot program to better reach underserved communities. That actually got extremely high praise and a lot of interest from entities that had never applied for this funding. So we're very excited about being able to engage some new entities around the TDM work, working on a regional data strategy. I mentioned that earlier. And then we are really excited and will be really focused on helping many of our partners, local governments, anchor institutions around a regional transportation and housing vision. It's been over 50 years since this region has developed a vision around transportation and housing. We have lots of plans, but no sort of guiding vision for the plans to connect to. And we're excited about trying to get that work started in the next year. So all of that work does not get done without talented and great staff. And we have a number of new and reclassified positions that are part of this recommended budget. The first is an assistant executive director, which will be a reclassification. I've had some conversations with the officers that really too much of my time is used at times for doing internal operational type work, which takes time away from me engaging local governments, working on regional issues, and working with the elected officials. This position will lead the internal operations around HR administration and have the chief finance officer reporting to the person day to day. We also are including a chief finance officer, which is really exciting. This is a partnership with the Mid-Carolina Regional Council. We're going to jointly hire a CFO and jointly fund the position. This is a good example where we ask our local governments a lot of times to cooperate, and the COG should be cooperating as well. And so we think there's a real opportunity to merge our finance operations to provide better value to our local governments by reducing our administrative burden, but at the same time being able to actually extend services by sharing positions. A communications coordinator that will be responsible for amplifying the brand and messaging to our local governments and to our partners. A few management analysts. The next three are really being funded through our ARP work. Management analyst general to work on ARP and grant writing assistance to local government members. A management analyst that will be focused on human resources. We are launching an effort with our local governments to provide technical assistance around the current challenges around recruiting and retaining. And this person will help lead that effort. We've met with HR directors and with managers a few times and are beginning to narrow down a list of work that we could do regionally that would help our local governments in this area. And then, and both of those positions are possible because of a appropriation by the North Carolina General Assembly for COGS to help local governments with ARP work. This next management analyst is also a result of a generous appropriation by the General Assembly to deal with disaster recovery. So on this, we are going to be hiring somebody to work on disaster recovery opportunities in alignment with that General Assembly directive and partnering with mostly counties around hazard mitigation and other things. Chair Ferguson, I think you may have your hand up. I wanted to make sure I recognized you.
I do. And If you want me to save questions, I'm glad to. I just have a question about.
Go ahead.
what's on
That's
this
fine.
slide.
Yes, ma'am. Go
Um,
ahead.
So for the management analysts that are being funded by ARP money, do we have a plan to cover them post ARP, or are these positions intended to be temporary, meaning for as long as we have funding from ARP?
That's a good question. And really, all positions at the COG are classified as only being sort of year to year based on funding opportunities from our projects. Specifically on those, they certainly, if we cannot find ways to sustain them, then they will probably only be a few years. But our hope is that, like with the management analyst for ARP, if we can build our grant writing program, that position could be sustained by that. The human resources position, we think there could be some interesting opportunities to do some regional pay in class work that could actually help fund that position. And so we're thinking about that in the business model for that position. On the disaster recovery, we haven't really gotten very far with that, but I do think there's an real opportunity around disaster recovery, emergency management, public safety, that we hope this position will be able to dive into. And we think there's some opportunities to sustain that position in partnership with especially our counties. So nothing certain yet, but we certainly think about, as we stand up these positions, how we hopefully could make them sustaining, if at all possible.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Really along that same line, as the chair said, this next planner one is the result of a grant opportunity that we have gotten supporting Chatham and Alamance County with a grant around some business development along the Haw River. Another example, we know it's funded for a couple of years. We'll have to think about how we can sustain that work. But Chatham and Alamance asked us to help write a grant, and we were lucky to get it and appreciate that opportunity. Some of the next two positions are really a result of some of the reorganization in our transportation area. A planner two to provide support to the transportation demand management program and our regional transportation coordination work. A senior planner that's going to be supporting the Triangle Area Rural Transportation Planning Organization, or TARPO. And that's really a result of Matt Day being promoted to the transportation director. So there needs to be a position to backfill his work on the RPO. And then a couple part-time positions in the AAA, or the Area Agency on Aging, a couple program specialists to help with some business development requirements to the master trainer and evidence-based health promotion activities. So staying on the theme of staff, let's talk a little bit about salary and benefits. And so the tight market, the need around salaries is becoming very pronounced. And so this year's recommendation is much more aggressive than it has been in prior years around salary. And there's actually two recommendations in the budget. The first is a market adjustment that would be applicable to all Triangle J COG staff members. And it would give all staff members a 5% market adjustment to recognize the changes in the market. But also just as important, it would move our minimum and maximum entry points on our salary scale up 5%. We're starting to find that some of our positions are getting harder and harder to recruit because our entry level salaries are not quite as competitive as they were just 2 years ago. And so an across the board market adjustment like this is really, I've never recommended it. It's not something that I would plan on doing every year. And I'll talk a little bit more about the why in the next few slides, but that's the first piece. The second piece is our typical merit increase of 3%. and that is for employees that are eligible for merit. They're either not in a probationary period, they've been in their position for a year or longer, and they meet expectations. We do our performance evaluations all at once in June, and that determines merit for an employee. Some good news on the health insurance front. It wasn't as rosy a few weeks ago. We were actually presented with a 20% increase in premiums for both the COG and employees. Through negotiation, we've been able to reduce that to a 0% increase. Now, you know, who knows what that means for next year? And with health insurance, it's really year to year. We had gone out for bid this year and were able to leverage that bid to get the league to come back down to 0%. But I'm sure we'll be bidding again next year. And we all know how health insurance is and how the numbers can move very quickly. So let me talk a little bit more about the salary recommendation. And I feel very strongly about this. So it's consistent with the market. I've got some evidence to show you in some other slides. Many of the local governments in our area are adopting fairly substantial increases this year, as well as some aggressive sign-on and retention bonuses. And I know we represent the entire region, but we really do compete because we're here in Durham. We compete with large local governments like Wake County, Durham, Raleigh, that are introducing some rather aggressive salary increases. In order for us to attract the talent to do this good work, we've got to stay competitive with our salaries. The other reason for this, and I pointed toward the fact that our minimum and maximums were going to go up by 5%. We've got to prepare for our salary study that will take place next year and be implemented not next fiscal year, but the fiscal year after next year. The board has directed us to do a salary study at least every 4 years. Next year is the year to do it. We know that our salaries are behind based on the classes, based on what we've seen. So we either move the minimums and maximums up this year, or I really do believe we would just be paying for it next year when we do our salary study. So we've got the funds to be able to do it. The market is tight. I think the time to do it now, and hopefully that lessens the impact of the salary study during next fiscal year. And again, this is rare. I've never recommended a market adjustment. Some people may call it a cost of living. It's not something that I aim to do every year, but I think it's very necessary this year. So here's what I know other COGs are going to be proposing around COLA or market and merit. And you can see the average of all the COGs is about 6.41%. We're a little bit ahead of that, but I like to think of ourselves as a market leader. But you can see there's some that are in that 8% range. Piedmont Triad Regional Council, which is just to our west, Mid-Carolina, which is just to our south, Cape Fear is at 7.5, Upper Coastal Plain, which is just to our east, is at 8. So for many of the COGs close to us, we're right on target to what others are doing. And then if you look at, these are some of the local governments we know of right now and what they're thinking about. And it's all over the place, but you know, it's not too far off from what we're thinking about. Chapel Hill's thinking about maybe 4 or 5%. I'm not going to read them all off to you. But here's a good example. I thought it was interesting in Carborough, they're doing a pay plan right now, but are deciding to do a $2,000 to $3,000 bonus on July 1st to hold themselves over until the pay study is complete. Some other examples, Aberdeen's doing a 6% or proposed 6% COLA, also thinking about doing a $2,000 one-time bonus. You may have seen in the news that the city of Raleigh implemented a COLA basically effective immediately of 2% back a couple weeks ago. You see what Durham, Zebulon, and Orange County are doing. There was one municipality that didn't identify itself in the survey, so I don't know who that is. And then the last couple are ones that we found out in the last few days. The manager in Wake County proposed his budget on Monday with a 3.1% COLA, and then between a 2 and a 6% merit. Chatham County, I understand is going to be recommending a 7% merit increase. And then Zebulon, a total of 8 as well, 3% COLA, 5% merit. And they're also considering a market adjustment on top of that. So I took the liberty, I think Commissioner Evans may be on, of grabbing a couple of David Ellis's slide, the manager in Wake County when he presented a couple of days ago. But, you know, he taught, this is what Wake County is doing, right? And we compete with Wake County for talent. They want to be an employer of choice, and you see what they're doing in terms of pay. But the other thing that I thought was really interesting is right on the manager's presentation, he's got a QR code and saying, hey, come work for us. And I thought that was really cool, but also for me as a director, I'm a little scared. I hope none of my employees scanned that code while they were watching the presentation. I'd be happy for any of my employees to work for Wake if they wanted to, but we've got great folks and we want to try to retain them. So wrapping up, also talk a little bit about our indirect expenses. This is the administrative overhead that we charge each program to make sure that the lights stay on, that the offices are working, technology is there. The employees on the admin side are there to manage and to lead and to do the finances. And the good news is our indirect rate has dropped every year since 2017. And the reason why that's happened is because we have brought in more and more programs to spread our administrative costs across. And so a program that was in existence in 2017 is able to use a lot more money now for direct expenses than they were, or now than they were in 2017. So that we continue to want to try to keep that indirect rate under control as much as we can. Finally, on contingency, I've recommended a contingency of $61,000. I've also recommended that we include a $20,000 fund balance appropriation. I believe with our adoption of a strategic plan, it is time for us to do a rebranding for Triangle J. We have talked about that for many years. We don't know the exact cost on that, but I think it's time to set money aside to do that work to make sure that our market image and the brand we've got is being recognized and as aggressive as it can be for this great organization. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop sharing just so I can see folks more easily, but I'm happy to answer questions or do anything that the members of the executive committee would like me to do to talk about the budget. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. As usual, thorough and well documented and evidence-based. So I throw it open to the floor to anyone who has questions. If there are no questions, then do you need a motion, Lee, for us to adopt to move ahead to the greater Board of Delegates?
So, you know, I'll throw this out for the executive committee to consider. Several years ago, the executive committee used to receive the budget first, and then they would vote to recommend the budget to the full board. And if the executive committee feels comfortable, that might be a good thing for you all to do, since unfortunately the full board is only going to get this presentation on the evening. They really need to adopt the budget because of the timing of our board meetings. So it would probably make the board feel a lot better if you all are inclined to recommend the budget. But again, my advice, it's up to the executive committee and whatever you all believe is most prudent.
Thank you. I concur. I think if we cannot stand by our budget, then it doesn't make sense for us to push it forward to the delegates without having a discussion. So again, are there any questions?
Yeah, Lee, Don Rains, I'm just questioning, will there perhaps be a mid-year correction of the budget once we know how some of the ARP money is being spent, or delays in money coming or going? Or you feel comfortable this will be intact for the whole year?
Yes, sir, I do. The only thing that I think is really in flux is that $10 million for Wake County, because it's really $20 million. And the timing right now, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get the money out, part of the money out the door this fiscal year, and then only 10 million next year. So that'll be the piece that I think is in flux. Everything else is pretty certain that we will receive. So I feel pretty good about the rest of the funding. But that 10 million out of a $34 million could swing the budget pretty significantly, but it's only one project. So hope that answers your question, sir. And the other thing I should say, the Wake County project, we have very specific part-time staff assigned to that project mostly. So we can be very flexible as that project ebbs and flows on assigning that sort of temporary staff into that project as needed.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, this is Heidi. I would move that we, as the executive committee, recommend approval of this budget by the full board. And I, for one, am very excited about this budget. What a wonderful presentation, Lee. And several items in the budget I found very exciting, like the food work, the regional food system work, the Triangle Sustainability Partnership, the regional transportation and housing vision, and the different management analysts also really appealed to me. And I could maybe imagine even larger counties might take advantage of some of those analyst positions, services that you offer. So anyway, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Pamela Baldwin is properly seconded motion. Any further discussion? We will vote.
Madam Chair, I think you're breaking up a little bit. I think you're back a little bit. I think you may have called for the vote, but
I did.
Okay, that's your call.
I did call for the vote and requested assistance for the roll call.
Thank you, ma'am. Jenny, it's all yours then.
All right. Archer Lodge. I see a thumbs up. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to navigate some screens. Aberdeen.
Aye. Will Mullaney. Aye.
Chatham County. They're not here. Durham County.
Aye.
City of Durham. Garner. Q went off. Hillsborough.
Kathleen Ferguson for Hillsborough, aye.
Johnson County.
Butch Lauder, aye.
Lee County.
Herb Smith, no.
Pittsboro.
Pamela Baldwin, Town of Pittsburgh, yes.
Princeton.
Don Rains, Town of Princeton, yes.
Sanford.
Rebecca Salmon, City of Sanford, yes.
And did I miss anybody?
Susan Evans is here with Wake. I'm not actually sure if I'm on the executive committee or not.
You are. I'm sorry, you came in after the initial roll call.
I vote yes.
Okay, yes, great. Thank you.
And
All right.
Ken Marshman was there with Garner, but I didn't
Yes,
hear
I
it.
think I know he had to leave early, so he has dropped off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate everyone for taking time for this. Lee, is there anything else for us to discuss? I have nothing on my agenda, and does anyone else have any other business?
There's nothing else, Madam Chair. The budget was the only item on the agenda.
All right, then. Well, then, certainly, we'll take that opportunity for an adjournment and hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
All
job,
right, take
Lee.
care.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Good evening.
right,
Take
bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Mark.